We're going to start there with an embarrassing night for Celtic, who were dumped out of the Champions League after a humiliating collapse away to the Austrian champions LASK. A result Martin O'Neill called one of his worst as a manager. Having been 3-0 up after the first leg, Callum McGregor's early goal put them 4 up on aggregate and seemingly certain for a place in the competition proper, only for LASK to launch an incredible comeback to take the game to extra time, where they won it with 11 minutes left.
I would accept the responsibility. That is down to me, regardless, whatever you think it might be, whether it's tactics, whether it's fitness, whether it's just everything perhaps, but we shouldn't have done that. And from the position that we were in, we shouldn't even have been going into extra time.
You've been in football for a very long time. Is tonight's result up there with one of the worst you've experienced on the touchline?
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, it took me a long time to get over the UEFA Cup final in 2003, and but this was majorly disappointing.
Well, Captain Callum McGregor apologised to the fans afterwards. He said, "We got what we deserved. We actually looked scared to go and win the game. I don't think we were that good in the first leg either and kind of got away with it. When you play like that, you can't have any excuse whatsoever. We have to suck it up. We apologise to the supporters and to the club because there's no way we should lose that game. Now we have to see what character we have." Did not pull any punches, did he? This is an incredible stat. Celtic had more possession than their hosts last night, yet LASK managed 40 shots at goal to Celtic's 8, and they had an expected goals tally of 4.91.
The qualification for the Champions League is major. It's really major. It's major in every aspect. It is financially for the football club. It is for prestige for all of us. Want to try and qualify. And being in the Europa League, scant consolation tonight, but we have to pick ourselves up, and and that's what we'll have to do. And that's my responsibility again, to do that.
Last night continues Celtic's miserable run in Champions League qualifying campaigns. In each of the last 6 seasons they've had to qualify, they have failed to reach the competition proper, losing to sides from Greece, Romania, Hungary, Denmark, Kazakhstan, and now Austria. So it's Europa League football for Celtic again this season. They'll find out their opponents when the draw is made on Friday. But as you'd expect, the scale of their collapse has drawn plenty of criticism on social media, including from the former Celtic striker Chris Sutton. He's amongst those not impressed at all, and he's criticised the club's transfer strategy. He posted, "People can say what they like about the collapse, and I respect that. But why sell your legs in midfield and weaken your team when the biggest games of the season are around the corner? Why sell Maeda? It's just stupid. The justification is in the winning. Celtic lost."
We know that we are a million miles from the finished article. That's absolutely true. I think we thought that anyway, regardless. But I think I said last week that if you could qualify for the Champions League, I think there would be players that would be wanting to come on that very basis. So that's not going to be the case, but we'll see. And when I say that we're short and maybe talking about a million miles away, we played brilliantly the other evening, brilliantly in the game. I thought they were fine side as well too, scored some great goals. And tonight, when we came up well and truly short, particularly in the second half.
All right, well, our reporter Adam Binney joins us in the studio now to run through it all. Good to see you in person. Yeah, the real Adam Binney right here in the studio. Great to have you in. Listen, I wish we could talk about something a bit more positive, but that was an extraordinary result, wasn't it, last night, given where Celtic were? What are the repercussions of another qualifying exit?
No, Matt, the big one for this is finances. Of course, everyone will talk about the prestige of playing in the Champions League. That's a big thing for manager Martin O'Neill. But really, what the club will be concerned about are the financial implications of this. £40 million, that's the estimated total that you will get for qualification into the league phase of the Champions League. Now, that's split up on various different parts of it. You've got the UEFA value pillar, which can add anywhere between 14 and 16 million pounds. Of course, you get at least 16 million pounds just for automatic qualification, no matter what. You can think maybe 10 million pounds added to that in gate receipts and ticket sales if Celtic were to sell out all 4 home matches as well. So if you break down all of the figures, by dropping into the Europa League, it's going to cost Celtic at least 16 million euros for this. So the financiations are pretty drastic here. And of course, that then has a knock-on effect on... Of course, that then has... We learned yesterday that Celtic were planning to splash the cash once again. They'd spent £30 million in the transfer window this summer. They were planning to spend more again, but only if they qualified. So the question is now, where does this lead them going forward in the transfer window? You can see on screen just now, that's the incomings for Celtic this summer. More than £30 million spent on Camilo Duran, Casper Hu, Hassim Hassan, Mika Bauer. And interestingly, last night, you look at that £9 million spent for Hassim Hassan. Celtic, they went to extra time. They knew they probably were going to have to score to beat LASK. He didn't even make it off the bench.
Yeah, and look, they've made a profit, right? They made a £5 million profit so far. And this keeps happening, doesn't it? So I guess the big question is, and Chris Sutton mentioned it there, is if you have a massive game coming up, which hugely affects the whole club, why on earth don't you get your transfer business done a lot earlier? So you've got those players in place, so you win. So you've got those in the big game.
Well, Matt, we're looking at it there, and you look, if you just take everything at face value and you see Celtic have spent £30 million, upwards of £30 million in a summer transfer window, in relative terms for a Scottish side, that's a huge outlay. That's a lot of money. Those are big fees on 4 players. But as you rightly point out, Celtic are still in the black. So on the face of it, yes, that looks like healthy player trading and that looks like good business done by the club. But as Chris Sutton pointed out, as you mentioned, Celtic last night certainly looked light in midfield. He pointed out that they have sold their legs in midfield, of course referencing Arne Engels, who departed for West Ham United for £22 million. Now, if anyone was watching Celtic in the Champions League 2 seasons ago or in the Europa League last year, it's these big European games where the game's a little bit more stretched, it's more about transitions. That's where Arne Engels is at his strongest. His physical attributes are immense. He's a really strong player in midfield, and Celtic perhaps looked a little light in those areas. So once again, I'll take you back to 12 months ago when Celtic were knocked out of this stage by Kazakh side Kairat Almaty. And then all of the fans started to point the finger at the Celtic board. A lot of the blame for the result was apportioned to the board for not supplementing the squad, for not providing Brendan Rodgers, who was the manager at the time, with the additions to the squad he needed to replace those big players who have left. Now, after the first leg, I'm going to admit, Matt, I thought, do you know what? Hats off to the Celtic board, because they have replaced the likes of Dyson Maida with Casper Hu, they've added Camilo Duran in attack, and you were thinking, oh well, Arne Engels is left, but Mika Bauer, who's came in midfield, looked really, really good in that first leg, but it's not the same profile. And if you look at the Celtic outgoings, purely just in terms of numbers, still light right across the board. They could do with some extra help in midfield. They need a backup left back, still looking to try and add in the goalkeeping department as well. So yes, I think it would now be fair to say Celtic perhaps should have spent more, or at least added more numbers to the squad, because when the game got stretched and goes to extra time, there were injuries to both full-backs. Yeah. Celtic were bringing on players who looked like they couldn't cope at that level.
Yeah, and the numbers are shocking. I mentioned it there, 40 shots on goal. We're not talking about a top Spanish side here, German side. We're talking about, with all due respect, the Austrian champions who hadn't, you know the stat, but they hadn't won for a while in Europe.
Yeah, 11 matches in European football. 11
matches in European football, right? You're giving up 40 shots on goal. The first leg as well, maybe Celtic got a bit lucky in that. So is that the concerning thing, is the performance as well? It probably merited it, didn't it, over the 2 legs? And who is to blame for where Celtic are at the moment?
Yeah, so Matt, you mentioned the lucky part of it there. So Callum McGregor, as we heard from, well, we saw his quotes from last night when he was speaking to TV post-match, and he said that they got away with it last week in that first leg. Again, you look at that first leg, Celtic won the game by 3-0. Callum McGregor scored yesterday. They were 4-0 up in the tie, but I was at Celtic Park for that first leg, and certainly there were warning signs. Over the 2 legs, LASK had more than 60 shots at the Celtic goal.
It's just unbelievable.
It's incredible. But in the first leg as well, LASK had a higher XG. than Celtic. If that's your thing, don't know if it is, Matt. But of course, that's because sometimes
prefer goals, to be honest with you, than expected goals.
Celtic, of course,
they are useful sometimes.
Yeah, Celtic, of course, scored 3 worldies in that game. But it was clear to see that, I mean, in particular, the threat of Adeniran up front for LASK. We knew that they were going to be a physical side, threat in behind, plenty of pace at the top end of the pitch. And there were warning signs in that first leg. When we put it to Martin O'Neill after the first leg, is the tie done? He was very quick to shut that down. He knew that they were going to be in for a game against the Austrian champions, who, of course, actually, when the draw came out, to be fair, was probably the hardest draw Celtic could have got based on their potential opponents. But, of course, the position they were in, at 4-0 up, there's absolutely no way they should have been losing that tie. You mentioned where does the blame lie? Martin O'Neill took responsibility for it last night. Callum McGregor spoke as well, quite passionately, about his own team's performances. But I think once again, we find ourselves 12 months on from that infamous game in Kazakhstan, and this perhaps eclipsing that as Celtic's potentially worst ever European result. I think the fans, once again, at this stage in the season, might be pointing the finger at the Celtic board.
Yeah, I can imagine they will. Good to have you in the studio. Can you come back in for Good Morning Transfers?
Potentially.
All right, okay.
Yes.
We'll try and